Here's the factory coolant pipe. This front part where the O-ring goes is by the water pump, and then it comes around here and feeds off eventually to the heater core. But the factory pipe was too long, so I cut out about 4 inches and tigged the angled bend back into it, and so that'll get a reasonably good angle towards the factory Toyota heater core location. So just got the coolant pipe installed, and it ends right here now. Before it used to end over about right here, so that's a big difference. Should be out of the way for the downpipe, and I think should be able to make it to the heater core okay, which is right up here. That shouldn't be too bad of a loop with the right angles and the hoses. The radiator came in yesterday. I bought it from CircleTrackSupply.com, which is actually just down the road in Statesville, North Carolina. So this is a double pass cross flow aluminum radiator, 100% made in the USA, so that's pretty cool. Fully aluminum with no epoxy. Should be pretty nice. It looks like a good quality radiator. And the core is just short of 2 inches thick, about 1 3/4 I think. So this should cool really well on that diesel, especially with the shroud and a couple other things to improve the airflow. Here's the inlet from the radiator that I cut off that was in the way, and it's way bigger than the thermostat outlet from the Volkswagen diesel engine, so I'm going to cut this down and shape it around the pipe and re-weld it and make this a little bit smaller. I don't have any other aluminum pipe here, so I'm just going to cut a section out of this and put it back together. So I just cut 2 sections out of the radiator inlet and reshaped the inlet so that it would match the diameter of the thermostat housing. That way my radiator hose will be the same, and also the smaller hose will fit better in the tight area that I'm working with. So there it is, just finished welding it. Turned out pretty good, and I'm getting ready to file down the welds so that the radiator hose will seal properly. Alright, just finished my section to modify the radiator here. So this is just going to allow the radiator inlet from the thermostat to be up higher where it's easier to reach and a little easier to work with, not in the way of other things. So obviously the radiator hose goes here on the top, and it's just going to go down the tube, and right here I'm going to weld that in, and that's the inlet into the radiator on the side tank. So it turned out pretty good. I'm happy with it. Took a lot longer to make than you'd think, but that's how fabrication work goes. Everything takes a long time. But I think it'll do the job. So I'm just going to weld my new piece on just like that. And then that hose will be exactly where I need it. Finally finished welding the new tank onto the radiator. My breaker here at the house isn't very good. It's just for the dryer. Welding aluminum takes a lot of amps to get it hot enough to melt it, and usually dryer circuits aren't rated high enough. I was having to run about 145 amps through the welder, through the TIG machine, to get it to melt and get a nice bead going. So the breaker would blow about every 1.5 to 2 inches, so it's really hard to get a good rhythm and get a nice bead going when that happens. So because of that, it doesn't look very good, but I know it's definitely sealed, and it'll be buried so you won't see it anyway, so it'll definitely do the job. So for the most part, I'm real happy with it. I think it turned out well, and I believe it's going to do exactly what I need it to do. So here's what I did for the upper radiator hoses. I just went to the parts store and found some that had the right diameters and shapes that I needed. The back one was kind of difficult to find exactly the right bend, so I just bent a piece of wire and took that with me, and then that made it a lot easier. And then the coupler here in the middle is made from exhaust pipe reducers, and that works pretty well. I made a brace that bolts down to the oil filter housing to support the weight of the hose there. So there's the upper hose, and that turned out really well. Here's the lower hose. And that one's looking pretty good too. Right over to the thermostat. So pretty much all that's left is the heater core hoses and possibly one of the oil cooler hoses. I might relocate it from the stock location. Not sure yet, still trying to decide. Just finished modifying the outlet on the back of the head that goes to the heater core. Now the factory Volkswagen, this goes straight out right here, but that hits the firewall in the Toyota. So I needed a right angle for the heater hose, so just welded a fitting in, pipe thread. Doesn't look the greatest just because it's cast and it's had some porosity. Welded okay, but nothing real good. So anyway, that should work there. And then later, if I want to reactivate the coolant glow plugs, they're there, and if I need them, I can wire those back in. So I had the cooling system pretty much together, but I failed to put in a port for the coolant gauge, the temp gauge. And I knew I didn't do that, but I wasn't sure where to put it, so I just had to take some things back apart. So I'm going to put it here in the coolant outlet on the back of the cylinder head. Got this bung that I'm going to weld in here. Hopefully it welds alright. And I'm going to put it there, and then the sender will just thread in. Well, it's not the greatest, but it'll definitely do the job for what I want to do. That'll get my sensor in there and should hold fine. Not too bad for junky cast aluminum. Just finished reinstalling the coolant pipe. Right down here is where I welded the nipple on, so I can connect this hose to the back of the cylinder head. I'm not real crazy about the bend. It'll work for now. I may change it later. But at least the system is sealed. I'll probably put some heat shielding material on that hose, since it is very close to the exhaust downpipe. That's not good on the rubber, obviously. Let me go to the other side, and you can see the coolant temp gauge sender that I put in, which is right over here. So now I got everything on there and everything is sealed. So I'm going to put some vacuum to it to check it. So we'll see what happens here. Well, that's a good sign. It holds vacuum. So next we'll put distilled water in it and pressure test it and see if it holds under pressure.